فجونم يقرأ ديما وعدوك تعمينا يجليو نور توين بحنا نيثو سوسان Güsten مشغلة نعلب تحرزو ثمديدا أديما مشتو تفلا بو لوموذو دو Assyrian Confederation دو حيوذو دحضرو ثرو هركي وخد حزال خوعدو يمقدمو نثيذا هركي ملثد ملقيلة بس ميدينا فرسو بقايدي تحرزتو دمشالينا لا أكمو شوولي وقد سيمنا لبوليشون انجليشويو. I just told our audience that about you just shortly, and we have mentioned you in our previous programs that you have issued 2 reports, and the last one we made a short program about this. Dear Susan, I will not repeat what you have said in your lecture here. Of course, I just want to take a few points to clarifications or something, or tell us more about if we take we know this confiscation, the land grab, the Assyrian land grab. You told us it's by the state, Turkey, the Khazina and forestry, Orman, and at the same time, but not only the Kurdish clans, but by different acts or non-actings of the Kurdish national movement, such as PKK, HDP, and so on. As to the state, to Turkey, I think we know the reasons and the confiscation policy, but as you mentioned in your lecture, the role of the Kurds maybe was surprising the outside world, but not the Assyrians. We have known this all the years, all the time, for centuries. Why do you think the Kurdish national movement is acting like they're doing, ignoring confiscations or non-acting, or maybe acting in way of confiscating? What do you think they are doing that?
Well, I think they, at the top, they have a good understanding of what they should be doing, and they are talking the talk, as we say in America, but not walking the walk. They are talking the talk in that they are talking about Assyrians. They are taking certain Assyrians on board and co-opting them. They are presenting themselves to the outside world, and maybe they wish they could actually go through with it, they could do it, but they want to present themselves as a multi-ethnic force now for democracy, in part maybe to convince the West and to look liberal, in part maybe because they really wish to do it. But in practice, when you do, and in my research around Tu Abdin for 15 years, I've seen this. In the practice, on the ground, it is not happening. In the practice, when Kurds grab land from Assyrians, it doesn't matter whether they are village guards or whether they are tribes supporting the PKK. They are PKK-affiliated tribes that are grabbing Assyrian land and occupying it and not giving it up and holding it with weapons. And I have seen, number one, in practice, that the HDP is not effective at controlling this, nor do they seem to really want to. They make some gestures, they had some party commissions, some mediation, but even their top dogs, even Selahattin Demirtas and Ahmet Türk, did not convince or did not make the tribes give the land back.
And we can conclude that they lack will to solve the problem.
Well, their own interests, of course. I mean, they are a Kurdish movement. The Kurdish interests are closer to them than the Assyrian interests. If they can have them both, sure, you know. But if there is a conflict, they are obviously going to come down on the Kurdish side. And there was, I quote in my report, a very interesting essay by Tana Akçam that was pointed out to me. In it, Tana Akçam describes the points to the old mentality, the Ottoman mentality of, it's called Milleti Hakime, it's the ruling people, the Muslim people as rulers. The Turks have it, and Tana Akçam points out the Kurds have it in the same way, the mentality that we are the rulers of the land. Traditionally, for centuries, we have owned this land, we have been able to take what we want, and we will continue doing so. It's very, very deeply engendered in the culture of the place. This idea that non-Muslim minorities are subject people and that you can take from them. And even though the HDP sees itself as a modern party and the PKK sees itself as an anti-traditional modern movement, in the end, I mean, it's made up of people with a very traditional mentality. And this goes just so deep, just as the expropriation of Syriacs goes on the Turkish side, deeper than the government, even with a progressive reformist government, when they really had the best of intentions, even at that time, when the government had good intentions, the state was expropriating Syriacs because it is there in the fabric of society. It's just an old tradition. And the same on the Kurdish side. Even though the Kurdish movement might fancy itself democratic and liberal and open, in society, the pressure on the Assyrians goes on, and on the minorities and the Yazidis, and this sense that it is okay to take it away from the minorities because we are the rulers of the land.
The millati Hakimi millet. We see same problems, same confiscations, same ethnic cleansing of Assyrians, Yazidis, and the indigenous people by the Kurds in Syria, Khabur, Kamishli, Gozerto, as we call it, Al Jazeera. We see it in northern Iraq, in northern Assyria, in Nala. In these days, just a few days ago, we published an appeal from one of our politicians after the Kurdish court has ruled to the favor of the occupying Kurdish family in a village called Julle in Nala. Nala is can be compared to Turabdin. It's a region only made by Assyrian and Assyrian lands, and there are Assyrians as well, more than Turabdin, and the Kurdish rulers and the Kurds are trying to just get them out. We see the same in Syria, Turkey, and Iraq, northern Iraq, Est in the Assyrian lands. Do you think it's an organized Kurdification policy from whoever Kurdish party it may be?
Well, I don't believe in conspiracy theories like a higher organizing Kurdish power, but I do believe in the power of traditions in a society. And it's not necessarily happening in a coordinated way that Kurdish parties who are, fighting among themselves often. I mean,
I'm not talking about coordinating, but the same pattern.
That's what I was going to say. There is no coordinating between the PKK and the KDP. Obviously, they have their issues, but there are enemies. But there is the same trend because there is the same tradition, there is the same mentality, and it all goes in the same direction in the end. And so I do see. I mean, I personally have researched only in Turabdin. I hear these things about what's going on in Iraq. I hear what's going on in Syria. But I have no first-hand experience of it. I can only attest to, but I can really attest to that it is going on in Turkey. And it is quite frustrating because in the West, the Kurdish national movement is seen as an ally, as a positive liberating force. You have a lot of propaganda about their multi-ethnic and democratic values and women and so on. There's a very positive picture and using them as an ally to confront ISIS. But from my research and from what I've found on the ground, working there for many years, I fear for those people who will have to live under the Kurds when they become the majority. I mean, yes, they are victims now in a lot of respects. They are victims, yes, the Kurds. But you can see now that once they are not victims anymore, once they begin ruling the land, and that it's already begun where they rule it now under the local legislation in Turkey, where they're in control of municipalities and so on and so forth. You can see it beginning there, but you can know for sure the West is dead wrong if they think the Kurds, once in charge, are going to be very nice to the minorities that have to live under them. It's going to be the same thing. Kurdification will replace Turkification, that's all.
Yes, Arabization, Turkification, and Kurdification. In your report, from the title, we see that you have a very dark picture of the whole. You call it farewell to Turabdin for those who are returning. But you also mentioned that Assyrians never lose their hope. How shall the Assyrians take your report? Shall they rely on hope and insist, or is it over now? What do you think?
Well, I chose that title to make clear how drastic it is, because we've always spoken of a critical situation in Turabdin for 100 years, Turabdin has been being lost piece by piece. But for the last year or so, this situation has escalated so dramatically that I thought it was necessary to draw attention to the quality of the drama, of how important it is what's happening. And I truly believe that this attempt cannot be made again. It's a historic opportunity that was lost because
To return, the Assyrian return.
Because those people who did return, they took big risks. I mean, you really have to pay a tribute to these people. They risked and they were going to lead their people back. Now that they have failed, they cannot attempt it again, not in their lifetime, because nobody can make that effort again within a generation. And because they were the last generation to really be rooted in the land, the next generation is not going to try it. So I think that opportunity is gone, it's over. But, I mean, as I do say at the end, the reason, what drew me to the Assyrians in the first place, the reason I started this, that I've been working with it for 15 years, is the immense hope and sense of a historical mission, you know, even trying to return to that land after 2001 was such a brave and hopeful undertaking, yes, that you say you can never give up on these people. There's always going to be hope as long as there is an Assyrian around.
Okay, what's your next project? Do you have more project about Tur Abdin and the Assyrians? And now you you moved from Turkey, you live in US. What's your next project about these issues, or do you have any project about Assyrians?
Well, there are, yes, a couple. With a filmmaker friend of mine back in Turkey, we are working on a documentary. We were actually going to start filming last summer on a documentary.
Same issue as the report?
Yes, but now with the security situation down there, we've had to postpone it, but we're still thinking, I mean, we've already secured some financing for it, and it's definitely still in the works. We just have to wait, because right now we can't film down there. And at the same time, I've started in Washington, now that I'm there, talking to people there, making contacts, and I'm talking to people about the possibility of making an exhibition about the cultural...
In Washington?
Washington, maybe, but maybe even internationally. I'm talking to people who have the resources to do something very big, and I'm hoping that we can do this, if we can show the outside world what there is. I mean, it always hurts me to think that Tur Abdin is so beautiful, and it has such an amazing heritage. The churches, the monasteries, to think, you know, what there is and the world doesn't know about it. I think if the world knew about it, it would be fantastic.
Thank you very much and wish you good luck. فرجونا ميقرا هاثي وايم قبل نثو أكمو خبر سملان بحارة عم سوسان غوستن وميدد مرلا بملثيذا أعدو مدعر لها هركي محويلات كمو أكردوي لتني يعني يفزوعوا كردوي ومقا بيذا كل بنثرا وثو كو عايشين بي كل لتني توتر ماني تكبعي سيميلان عرب أو تركوي هاني سيكبعي وعامانو سيميلي كردوي بانجليزي كميلا كورديفيكيشن تودي غالبا على نفرج علينا ويومي باسيمي